Do warmer temperatures mean I need to fuel with more gels since it feels like I'm working harder in the heat?
That's a really good question. So this is the theory behind the question, which I totally understand, is because my RPE, right? Now, RPE, as we've discussed in past sessions, means rate of perceived exertion. It means how hard you feel like you're working. Because that rate of perceived exertion is getting higher, therefore I must be working harder muscularly. Therefore, I must need to fuel more to fuel that extra work, right? I get so logically, that's sort of how it's reasoned out. It's not necessarily the case all the time, and it's not really the case this time. We're going to get into that. The theory, right, is when you're really hot outside or anywhere, when you're really hot, a lot of the blood in your system kind of goes to the surface of your skin, right? Your skin temperature rises because your core temperature is also elevated. And the way your body cools itself off is trying to move the heat from your core temp outwards, right? That's like the theory behind sweating. The reason why we sweat, right, is to try to get that heat from our core temp outwards and then kind of evaporate into the air from our skin. That's like a very oversimplified way to, describe it. Just so, to throw out some numbers, if we're just chilling, right, our skin temp generally sits around, say, like 32 degrees Celsius. If we're training and it's like ideal training, right, like there's a fan on us, the AC's blasting, it's like crispy, then that skin temp can drop to, let's say, 28 degrees Celsius, but our internal temperature, our core temp will go up to like 38, 39 degrees. So it's this wide differential of temperature, and this is all relevant to fueling. So I'm going to get to fueling, but there's this wide differential of temperature, right? Between on the inside, our core temp is say 39 degrees Celsius, but on our skin, if you measure a skin temp, it's like 28 degrees because the body creates this differential to get the heat from our inside outside and try to cool us off. Now, if we're not in ideal temps, therefore, summertime, it's hot outside, we're racing, the sun's on us, we're getting really hot, that internal temp stays the same. It stays like 39 degrees, but our skin temperature is not down to 28. It goes up to 36, 37, whatever it is, right? Just throwing out some arbitrary numbers. And so that's when you start feeling really, really hot. It's because your body isn't able to cool off as efficiently. Now, what is essential in digesting carbs, right? It's blood in our digestive system, in our GI, right? So if we're not able to have blood to digest the carbs that we ingest, that leads to GI distress, and that equates to, not a happy time training or racing. And so the theory goes that the hotter it is outside, therefore the hotter your skin temp is, meaning the more blood gets drawn to the surface of your skin, the less carbs you're able to absorb because there's less blood near your digestive system to absorb the blood and break down the fuel and do all that. So this is still like, the latest paper that was published on this was literally like 4 months ago. So this is very much still like in the science. It was in fashion up until 5, 6, 7 years ago, let's say, to lower the amount of carbs an athlete would take per hour, right? Like high carb fueling, being high carb anything is kind of a recent thing in terms of athletic performance world, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, recent. So a lot of the science is still coming out. A lot of people are still trying to figure out what the exact like perfect point is. But yes, it is basically affirmed that when you're really hot, you can absorb less carbs. And so, we did this kind of caloric deep dive. I think it was in the March Achilles Connect session where we figured out like, okay, most gels will tell you to take one gel every 45 minutes. Most gels have 25 grams of carbs in it. Therefore, that's back of the napkin math, right? Like roughly 35 to 40 grams of carbs per hour that these, you know, GU and Power Gel and Morton and all these people are trying to tell us to take, right? On average. And so a lot of athletes still, let's say on the low end, it's 35 to 40 grams of carbs an hour. A lot of athletes will take up to 80, 100, 120 grams of carbs per hour. Whatever that number is that you figure out for yourself, and if you're interested in, you know, doing a revisit on that, let me know. But whatever that number is for yourself, you need to sort of have a number for ideal conditions, therefore like winter training or indoor training when you're able to control the temperature. And you need another number for your outdoor conditions when it's really hot. Because just for me, for example, right, let's say I take 90 grams of carbs per hour when I'm on the bike. This is ideal temperatures, right? Cold, crispy, fans on me, all that. If I'm outside and it's really hot, it's like 100 degrees and I'm, you know, really, really heated, that number might drop to say 75 an hour. And it's important to know that because the last thing you want is to overtax your system with carbs that it cannot digest. And then you have GI distress. One last thing, and then you can go in questions, is that's one reason why some people, when they start their fall marathon season, right? A lot of the fall marathons are October and November. That means that people are starting their fall marathon training in July, which is the midst of the heat. And a lot of people will try gels and they'll feel really ill taking those gels. My phone's talking to me. No, it's okay.
Okay.
They'll feel really ill taking those gels, and they feel ill because of that blood differential. It's not because the gel is really bad for them or that it's too much just in general. They're not taking into account the heat, if that makes sense.